All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Here.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Present.
Councilmember Todd is out. Councilmember Saper.
Here.
Councilmember McGrone.
Here.
And Councilmember Smith is out.
And the Pledge of Allegiance this evening. No, Boy Scouts will be led by Councilmember Fitzgerald. Thank you. Next item is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
No.
Unless we're pulling.
You know what? We'll skip it. I'll just skip it when I get to that item. You know, there's a lot of different ways I think you can do this, but we already have a first, a second. I started the call
I
already.
can recall my motion and move to remove an item.
Well, who was the second then? Okay, will you withdraw your second?
I do.
Okay, she'll withdraw the motion. Now we'll go back. We are removing item number 8 and moving that. Well, we're removing item number 8. How about that? There we go.
Move to approve the amended agenda, removing item 8.
Is there a second? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Boom. That takes us to comments from the public. Anyone from the public wishing to speak, please step up to the podium. Good evening.
Hello, hi. My name is Molly Lothman, and I appreciate the chance to talk for just a couple minutes about our business that we're bringing here to North Kansas City and our desire to have short-term parking available in 5 spots in front of our store for our guests. My family owns and operates McLean's Bakery and Markets. We are local here to Kansas City and currently have 4 locations in Kansas City: Waldo, Shawnee, Overland Park, and South Overland Park, as well as one in Lawrence. We are beyond excited to be a part of the North Kansas City community as another local small business. Thanks to much of your all efforts here in this room, you can see the growth and excitement around North Kansas City, and we feel lucky to be able to be a part of it. McLean's has been a family-run business in Kansas City for almost 80 years. My family took over operations in 2014, and our mission is to make life's moments sweet. We are opening our newest store right here in downtown North Kansas City on the bottom floor of the beautiful new Oxbow apartment complex. This location, due to design, will not have a drive-through. The reason I am here tonight is to ask that the 5 parking spots directly in front of our entrance on the west side of Swift Street would be designated as short-term parking of 15 minutes between the hours of 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. If you're not familiar with McLean's, we are a fast casual bakery and lunch spot. We pride ourselves on classic pastries, great coffee, amazing breakfast sandwiches, birthday cakes, fresh salads, and sandwiches. Of our 4 Kansas City locations, over 65% of our sales come from either our drive-thrus, to-go, or online orders, totaling in the multi-millions. Obviously, a large percentage of our revenue. We hope short-term parking could be a mutually beneficial solution for us in the city. With our model of fast casual and targeted 8-minute ticket times for made-to-order food, we believe these spaces would be used often and exactly as intended, a quick stop to grab a pastry and coffee or lunch on the go. Our hope would be to be able to provide car-side service by running online orders out to cars as well, making life a little sweeter for guests who have young kids in the car or are less mobile, etc. In addition to being able to make life a little sweeter for our guests, temporary parking in this location will help to avoid creating parking problems in adjacent parking areas by allowing us to serve multiple customers per hour within the same parking space. It would hopefully reduce congestion, double parking, and circling the block, keeping all businesses in the area happy with ample parking and great service. We appreciate your time considering our request. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments from the public? Good evening.
Hello, Council. My name is Tom Bailey. I live up in Northgate Village. I know you just pulled it from the agenda for the discussion about trash, but I figured I'm here, I might as well talk. In brief, I think Jim's has done a fantastic job. All of my personal observations is it's gone well. Everything has hiccups, but very reasonably so. One thing that my perspective on it is I am concerned about possibly the cost of the recycling, if that's how large a percentage that is in relation to the overall cost. My understanding is most of that is going to the landfill anyway. How much are we paying for the virtue signaling of having blue lidded bins? I don't know, but I'm willing to forego some of that cost if it's all going to the same place anyway. I don't know about the possibility of centralizing the location of the pickup of recycled items. I know that's essentially what I do anyway. I hold aside my aluminum, I hold aside my glass, and I'll go drop them off. So for the people who really do care, I think they'll go to that extra step. And yes, you'll lose on some people who may not have the mobility issues. I get that, but the goal here is the overall volume is how do we actually get some of the stuff recycled, even if it's not ideal, and I get that. So overall, once again, very happy with Jim's service. Whenever this comes up for discussion, there's at least one resident's view.
Thank you. Further public comments? I thought I banned you like a year ago. No. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Zach Clevenger, 1028 East 24th Avenue, and I'm going to talk about item 8 as well as I know you pulled it, but just to give you my 2 cents worth, I want to echo Mr. Bailey's comments about gyms. They've done a great job. I was on the council before when we made the switch to gyms, and from WCA, and it was night and day. Gyms did a much better job. Not a lot of missed pickups. So for me, you know, the twice a week is nice. It's nice to have, but I could go to once a week if necessary. I think you'll have to look at the cost and maybe when you bid it out as twice a week or once a week. As far as recycling, you have to take a hard look at that, like Tom said, and, you know, if they're not going to take it, then why pay for it? You know, I think, you know, if we are going to do it, the curbside would be good, but if not, then, you know, bulky trash, I think once a month is good. Yard waste, I don't know, maybe once a week or once every other week. But when you bid it out, make sure, you know, just give options. Give options about, and that way you can kind of mix and match your service and kind of piece together and see what you want. But certainly appreciate the trash service that we have, and Jim's has done a good job. And I don't know if they'll rebid, you know, when we open it up for bids, but because I know they don't want to renew it to 3%, which they can't. But thank you.
Thank you. Further public comments? Good evening.
Hello there, Valerie Swearingen, 2408 Fayette. I also was going to comment on 8, but this is kind of just an overall comment that I make about once a year, a public comments asking you all to be good stewards of our financial discussions that you make. I know I read the Facebook post, Councilman Smith, that you put out today about how the trash is 100% paid by residents. I didn't know that. That was new to me. I know we have made changes with water, sewer, adjusting it so the city doesn't have to subsidize any portion of that. But I think my overarching comment is we do a lot of extra stuff. Like we had the park board and city council joint meeting last week about putting in a shared bike path that is a big expense, somewhat funded by city, somewhat funded by grants, but it only applies to a certain number of people that would use it. And we've talked about electric vehicle charging stations, upward of $1 million, that only a certain number of people would benefit from. And I think our trash services, water, is a basic service that everyone who lives or pays a water bill in North Kansas City needs to benefit from. So when you get to that point, I would like to ask that you have as lengthy of conversations about those basic services as you do about the extra, the pretty, the icing on the cake. So,
Thank you. Further public comments? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 6, which I will let you read this evening.
2025 Graft Tillis Water and Sewer Rate Discussion.
We're going Mike, Nick, Tom, there we go.
Hi, Tom Beckley from Raftelis. So we're here tonight to give an update, and you know, to give a little background and refresh everybody's memory. You know, we did a rate study several years ago, and we've been coming back each year, basically confirming, you know, whether the proposed increases from that past rate study are still valid or they need to be changed. And then, you know, last year we had a discussion about minimums on the water bill, and we'll have that again tonight. So that's the main thing we're going to talk about tonight. So on the water rates, in the 2021 study, we proposed a 4% increase for this year. And if you'll remember, last year we had a 15% increase. And really what we were doing the last few years is undoing previous rate decreases, to get back to where we were, a little higher. And so now we've returned to what I would, generally classify as more inflationary type of increase, a 4% annual increase. And so looking at the revenues and expenses and fund balance, the 4% will still support the utility, provide adequate fund balance moving forward. Next slide. On the sewer side, we were at 7%. We have a little higher. There's some more capital expenditures going on in the sewer utility. I mean, there have been on the water utility too. On the sewer utility. And so based on the revenues, expenses, capital improvement plan, and the fund balance, the 7% still will support the utility. And both of these increases are pending, talking with staff, I'm sure many of you are aware, right now there's water and sewer master plans ongoing. And so, we don't want to propose a radical change until we get those master plans, because those are going to provide us a much better insight into what the capital improvements are going to be needed over the next 5-10 year period, once those are done in the next year or so. So the other discussion, and something we spent a lot of time obviously talking, that those of you remember last year, was the water minimum. Prior to last year's changes, we had a 3,500 gallon minimum built into the water bill. And last year we lowered it to 2,000 and, said, hey, we'll take a look at this again. So when we look at this year, we're only proposing a 4% increase on water. And so when we were doing the 15% increase last year, 15% on a $22 minimum, that was over $3 that we were talking about, an increase. And what you'll remember we did is basically the folks who used up to 3,500 gallons paid less than the 15% headline increase. They only paid 1.5% up to close to 15. And then those over paid a little bit higher, just the way we restructured the rates, but not much higher than 15%. But when we only need a 4% revenue increase like we do this year, 4% on the $22 minimum basically works out to 88 cents. It doesn't give us room to make a drastic adjustment to the rates without really impacting certain customers, having certain customers pay way above the headline increase, which, working with staff, we didn't think was desirable. So given the constraints of we're only seeking a 4% revenue increase this year, if we wanted to adjust the minimum again, what we recommend is that we would only do it another 500 gallons this year, because really that somewhat equates to that 88-cent increase on the minimum. So we could lower the minimum from 2,000 gallons to 1,500 gallons. And what we would do is we would keep the minimum bill for 5/8-inch meters the same as it is now. The minimum bill for larger meter sizes would go up 4.5%, and the volume rates would go up 4%. This would generate the 4% revenue increase that basically our rate study recommended. Customers paying 1,500 gallons, using 1,500 gallons and less, would see no change in their bill. And that's about 30% of the bills that the city issues every year are 1,500 gallons or less. And then those using 1,500 to about 1,900 would see a small increase, less than the 4%. And those over about 1,900 would see a 4.6% or so increase. And so this accomplishes the goal we had discussed last year when we were doing this, which is, some customers express concern about paying for something they're not receiving, having a minimum and they don't use the minimum. And it also minimizes the impact on our lowest volume customers by doing this. We're going to be able to keep the rate increase less than what I call the headline increase of we need 4% more revenue. How do we get that? The smallest customers will see less than a 4% increase. Larger customers will see a little bit more of an increase, but not much this time around, given the relatively small overall revenue increase. And I know I skipped a slide, so we'll go back to this other slide. So if we do the across-the-board adjustment, which is just do the 4% revenue increase and the 7% revenue increase on each of the bills, call it a day. Basically, everybody's bill for water would go up 4%. Everybody's bill for sewer would go up 7%. That would result in about a 6.3% total bill increase, approximately $541 per month for a 4,000 gallon, what we call the typical residential bill, which is what we've traditionally used when we've had these discussions. make you skip 2 slides. Sorry, since I went out of order. And as you can see overall, right now, with where we stand compared to where everybody else is after, we had these discussions in October last year. Right now, of the communities we've traditionally compared to, we're at the low end. These increases would move us a little, but we would still be relatively modest overall for a 4,000-gallon bill. And as I said, we actually do have a lot of residential customers who are a lot less than 4,000, but 4,000 has always been the number we've typically used as a typical bill. But yeah, over half our customers are less than, a little over half of our customers are actually less than that. So, the real direction is whether or not we want to continue to, do the adjustment to the minimum, recognizing that given the constraints of only having a 4% revenue increase this year, that we really can't do it nearly as much as we did last year, but we can keep moving in that direction, or do we want to keep it simple and just do a 4% revenue adjustment for all customers evenly? Either one would be a pretty reasonable approach.
Is that your last slide?
Yes.
Can you go back to, I guess it was first
Sure.
or second slide?
Well, Nick can.
Nick can, there we go. Okay, yeah, that one right there. So it talks about reviewing the budget capital improvement plan and the water sales. Can you tell us where we actually are in our fund balance right now and whether or not at the end of this fiscal year we anticipate hitting our goal fund balance?
Yes, and speaking with city staff, really, they're making sure that capital projects only go out as the fund balance is available. So really, that's how they're making sure that the utility does hit the fund balance target. So, there's small capital projects that, if the fund balance isn't there, they're just not moving forward with them until the fund balance is available. And that's really how they're making sure that we hit that goal. Fund balance was a problem last year. We talked about that fund balance was going in the wrong direction, and the 15% revenue increase did help address that.
Okay, so, fund balance-wise, we're in a good place now.
Yes.
Further council member questions then? Councilmember Saper.
To what extent have necessary capital improvements been deferred in order to maintain that?
My understanding is there have been a lot of improvements at the water plant, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware. A lot of those were paid for out of gaming fund revenue, though. But really, my understanding is that what's being done, needs to be done, is being done. However, the master plan is going to provide a much better roadmap for what needs to be done to address the ongoing capital needs, and that's really what we're waiting for to develop a longer-term capital plan.
So no ongoing capital needs have been deferred?
That's my understanding. I'll let
I don't think they've been deferred, but it is something that we're monitoring. I mean, I think what Anthony's done a great job of over the last couple of years is really looking at our infrastructure overall, and the master plans will certainly help with that. But the recommended capital has gone up quite a bit since we started this rate study. To date, we've not deferred anything. We've put in the budget the projects that we think we need to see going forward. But we do have to continue to monitor that because while fund balance is in a better place, it's still something that we have to look at. I mean, I'm looking at our projections right now, and you'll get the proposed budget in 2 weeks. We're still kind of in that 10 to 15% range on fund balance.
Which water or
depending
sewer?
on both.
Okay.
I know sewer was significantly lower a couple years ago, and so that one has bumped up. Water has stayed pretty steady, but it kind of depend on where the capital shakes out at the end of the day, because that is the overall biggest expense in both of those funds. They are both highly capital-driven funds, more so than some of our other ones, which are more personnel-driven.
Which in the past, we've certainly used the gaming fund to cover, like you said, the water treatment plant to help keep
Right.
some of these bills
Well,
lower as
and,
well.
and that was a big discussion when we were first engaged of whether we want to borrow the money from the gaming fund, have the utility take care of it itself. Or,
As I recall, some of it, the operational side was one thing, right?
Right.
Everyone wanted the operational,
Yes.
to be able to fund itself.
Yes.
Capital kind of seemed open to.
Right. Well, and then, between when we were first engaged and when we
Yeah.
did the 2021 study, then there was the decision that was made to lower rates, which was not a decision we were involved in.
Yeah, correct. Okay, further council member comments? Seeing none.
And of course, this is just preliminary information because we don't expect to, get the approval to the rates until October.
Okay,
just
so
like
more
we
time
did
to actually
last
go
year.
through. Well, so I'm going to pick on my favorite topic.
Okay.
I said I was done. I'm not. Suspended solids and bioauction demand. Where are
Sure.
we at on researching that?
So we all took a field trip and went over to Ingredion several months ago. And they were having some issues for several months where the numbers had gotten really high. They've come back down, and now they are supposedly, what we've been told is they are working on a new secondary treatment process that supposedly, I don't want to give them too much credit, supposedly will bring them into being basically domestic strength below the limits, and then they would not have significant surcharges like they have in the past. That's what they're telling us, and supposedly that's going to be done in the next 6 months.
And then we'll be able to get to a better rate.
Yeah, and that's still something we're working on, that we're working on with them, is making sure that the balance between the revenue we're collecting from them matches what we're paying it.
So how has what we're getting billed versus what we are billing, how has that been going?
There have
what kind
been,
of
it
imbalances
depends on the month, because it can vary dramatically month to month, but some months are not great, where we are not recovering the full amount that Kansas City's billing us, and that is a challenge.
Do you know where we are overall for the fiscal year, though, all those months combined?
We're at a deficit for this fiscal year.
So we're still at a net deficit on companies that are generally putting this stuff in, while
Well,
also
and I
increasing
wouldn't
our
even say
residents' bills at the
companies,
same time.
because there's
It could
one
be a lot of
com-
places, but
Yeah.
obviously what they're putting in is generally a lot denser than what
One
I'm probably
company is
putting in my
responsible
home.
for 90% plus of it.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, we do have other surcharge customers, but
Yes,
one
yes, yes,
customer
yes.
is
I
responsible.
didn't mean to pick on,
for-
yeah, there's many,
Yes.
many, yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Smith.
Have we been able to track down or test for the INI to know what's getting into the system we're being billed for from Kansas City?
Actually, yeah, so we have been doing that through the sanitary wastewater master plan. We've had meters in the sewers through part of that study, looking at rain gauges and comparing the amounts.
Yeah.
Probably a lot more inflow than infiltration, but we're looking at ways of addressing that through the master plan. Basically, inflow would be more direct connections where storm drain is connected as opposed to groundwater penetrating or something like that. So yeah, we're making a lot of progress on that, and from the master plan, I expect us to have a lot of different means and methods to approach that.
Appreciate that. Yeah, that seems like a pretty decent way to cut off the expense to Kansas City if we're not sending our rainwater to be processed.
Yeah.
Do we know the difference in, I mean, that would be a big thing to get our arms around, but like what we're seeing billed through the meters here versus what we're seeing the meter sending to Kansas City? Like how many, what's the difference in gallons versus, like from what we know, like we have meters on every place that's running water.
Well, and you have to remember that some of it is just an estimate, because we estimate residential sewer flows. We don't.
Right.
Because how much water they use doesn't necessarily sewer. I don't have that I don't have that in my presentation. I can make sure to bring that next time, though.
Yeah, I mean, that would be more of a winter thing, right? Because in the
Yeah.
winter, much of what comes out of the faucet goes into the sewer.
And but again, 70% of our flow is one customer too. So
Sure.
At the end of the day, it's really looking at one customer, everybody else, and getting the totals.
Okay.
All right, further council member comments? I don't have any more this time either. There we go.
The big thing moving forward is the council comfortable with us, at least for budgetary purposes, sticking with the percentages?
I'll say I struggle with the percentages, especially when you hear we're still at a deficit on the suspended solids and bioauction demand. Like you are literally having the residents cover what is not being billed on the other. I mean, someone's having to pay for it,
Yes.
right? And we are increasing rates while saying they're not paying their full share.
And
of
we
what
could
they're putting out
potentially
either.
come up with a solution for that, to address that next year, I would say. I mean, that's something we still have. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but that's something that we could definitely work on if that's the direction. We're just concerned about that. One, that they said they're going to fix it, but of course, I would take that with a grain
Yeah.
of salt. But it's definitely something that should be addressed. And, we've talked about different approaches we can use. Because there's even, even getting the data can be a little challenging, because the data that we read in Ingredion doesn't necessarily match what's at the pump station,
Yeah.
which is what we're actually building. And those are some of the challenges that we've been trying to reconcile.
Okay, and this, I guess, more of a nit question. So fund balance perspective, you said we're estimating the end of this fiscal year to be at, what's the target?
I'm looking primarily, not necessarily at this year, but when I look at it from a budget standpoint, I'm looking at where we would be at the end of next year. So that's where I'm factoring in. We've come in with fairly good fund balances at the end of this year, but we've also, on the water side, we've transferred in quite a bit from gaming for 2 large projects that were pre-planned.
Yeah.
That's the lime feed system and the Burlington, Maine one, plus some carryover from the water treatment plant. That one, I'm a little bit more comfortable on the water side. The wastewater, I think you bring up, I mean, the questions that you have, what I'm projecting right now, and there's still some big capital projects that we'll have to have discussions on in terms of how they're funded. I'm projecting about, around 15% on the wastewater side by the time we end next year with
End of
this
fiscal year
increase.
25, okay.
What I think would be good to show, and we can certainly work on this too, since we have until October, I think the revenue numbers are pretty solid with the rate increases that we have built in, but looking at a breakdown of basically the surcharge component versus the flow component. And I think based on the questions tonight, I think that would be a good thing for us to bring back and show how that revenue expense surplus deficit is going on each of those components. So based on the questions that I've kind of heard tonight, I think that's something that we can work on to give a clear presentation of, because part of the fund balance has been built up because of the surcharge, because there have been months where.
Yeah, where
And
it's been the
so
opposite direction.
bringing just kind of a more clear delineation of those two things to show what's supporting what, I think would
Okay.
be a good.
And then, I mean, if we're
Good
going to talk
follow-up.
about it again, it would be good to have some of those financial numbers on here as well, because that's entirely what this is based off of. But then there's no actual, financial or budgetary numbers, I don't think, on the slide.
Well, yeah, part of
Sorry,
it
and that
was.
wasn't, that was just very broad. I wasn't trying to
I understand.
to pick on you there.
No, we can definitely make sure that we get you a more detailed update on what you're concerned about, because it has been something we've spent a lot of time talking about.
Yeah.
And we've talked about different approaches, but have yet to work with Ingredion on how we're going to actually address it.
Got it. Okay. Got anything else for now?
Just the same for now, for budgetary purposes for 25. We'll continue using the 7 and 4, knowing that it'll be looked at some more.
Yeah, sounds good.
I mean, I guess we uncovered this, how long's it been? When we uncovered that Ingredion was being supplemented by the gaming fund, essentially, like down the line? Like a business that was, well, I mean, it's been supplemented,
Yeah, it's been, a few years now.
if it's not a
Yeah.
fair word to use.
At first, it wasn't a big, there wasn't a huge disconnect, and then there was a period where it had gotten a lot worse, and then that's about the time that we visited them and did a field trip out there. And it's gotten a lot better, and now they tell us they're doing the secondary treatment, but it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. It's, part of it is just making sure that we use the right data, and it's supportable, without, especially because obviously Ingredion is an important customer to the city.
Sure.
And we want to be careful that we don't go off half-cocked. But at the end of the day, it's absolutely something that needs to be rectified so that it's fair to both the city and the customer.
Well, I guess who's kind of like checking the work when they do this sort of double scrub system that they're planning for? Sorry, I don't know the exact quotes of what they're calling it, but.
It's a little outside, but it's basically secondary treatment, right?
Yeah, and actually, so there's a pending, what am I trying to say here? There's a pending contract for professional services that we're about to bring forward for actually doing an audit of the pretreatment system.
Okay.
And looking at that very closely. We do that internally now. We have for the past 35 years, but I think that we could maybe look at it closer. And so that's actually a component of that professional service contract that we'll be bringing forward here in the near future. So there's a lot to that component. There's actually a lot when it comes to our agreement with Kansas City. Ingredion is, there's a lot of different elements that they put into the sewer that we have to watch and monitor. There's some new ones emerging that we have to look for, and I think there's going to be a lot of change on that coming forward.
You know, I think what would be good to do is take a comprehensive approach, look at all of it, because that does make a lot of sense. If you're looking at capital improvement projects, and maybe council does look at a few of these projects, say, okay, move this over to gaming fund, right? Now you have a whole different game on the fund balance. You start to change things. So it might be good if we actually see that in totality before making any sort of hard decision. See the fiscal side of it, see where the budget is, see what the capital improvement projects were, see where the estimated is and budgeted next year as well, to get a full grasp on where we are. But I mean, if everyone wants to go ahead with 4 and 7, that's fine too. But I think if we see the whole picture together.
And to some extent, even when we talk about this issue with Ingredion, that doesn't necessarily change that we need 7% more revenue. It just changes that maybe we're going to get a lot more of that 7% from Ingredion than the other customers. Because the 4 and the 7% are really the revenue increases that are necessary to support the utilities. And then really kind of what we're talking about with the Ingredion issue is, hey, Ingredion should maybe be picking up more of the 7%. You know, which is opposed to water, which I did talk a little bit about, where I gave you 2 options, which is everybody pays 4% more, or our smallest customers pay a little less than 4%, everybody else pays a little more than 4%, and we address the minimum again. And so it's really about, the analogy I often use when we're talking about this is, the 4 and the 7% are the size of the pie we need. I think we're pretty comfortable that those numbers are correct. The ingredient question is more a question of how we're going to slice up that pie and actually get that additional 7% revenue.
Right, because I'm just thinking like the monitoring that happens, the initial sort of audit, and then what happens with the cost of continuing to monitor, and what does the charge looks like when 1 month they're clean, but the next month they're not? Like,
Right.
I don't know, because
Right.
anything could change.
Yeah, and so, yeah, there are approaches to addressing that as well, especially in base charge usually. But that's part of the pre-treatment program that Anthony's talked about, where they're going to do the audit.
Okay.
Is making sure that those costs are being recovered from the appropriate customers.
I'll just throw out there, I guess where some of the numbers become a struggle is, I mean, we have hit people 20%, 15%,
Yes.
now another 4. And so it'd be good to actually see the fund balance and have that real conversation
I know.
with financial numbers backing all of it as well. So either we can explain to people or say, oh, we're in a pretty good position. I mean, if we're getting closer to our target and our goals. And we are backing it off quite a bit from previous years.
Right.
But
Well,
is there room to, again, capital improvements from this other mix and match some more?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And as I've pointed out once already, one of the challenges on the water side is that there were water decreases that
Yeah.
that we were basically undoing,
Yeah.
which I understand were to
Yeah,
offset
yeah,
large
yeah.
sewer increases, but
Yep. All right. Further council member comments? It's quite a bunch tonight.
I appreciate
Thank you.
It gives us some good insight into what we need to bring back to you, so I appreciate it.
There we go. We'll do it again.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Item number 7.
River North Event Contract for Services discussion.
Good evening, Joe Gower.
Good
I'm
evening,
guessing you're
council.
leading this one. Yes. Or someone else. Okay.
I'm going to try to keep this under 10 minutes. We've got a lot to cover. So some background for those, can we do the next slide, please? Some background for those unfamiliar. River North, which is a 501c6 business league representing the North Kansas City storefronts, is once again coming before the city to request tourism grants for our 2 major events that cover both the fall and the spring. Last year, we introduced North Kansas City Fall Fest. A little bit of background, early 2023, several River North businesses as well as the city wanted to put on a Fall Fest with music on a blocked off street. And our organization brought in 500 plus people to several closed blocks of Swift Street for our first ever event. We think by all measurements, inaugural Fall Fest was a success. It helped showcase Swift to visitors who might not have been familiar with it. Next slide, please, sorry. And provide some visibility for businesses like Velo Garage and Tap House, Sugar and Spice Catering, along with all 4 North Kansas City breweries popping up in our beer tent, FN Music Vintage Sounds popping up a sidewalk sale from their vinyl record collection, McLean's Bakery popping up providing treats, and major sponsors like Besame Wellness and ProPrint providing information tents. All these local businesses getting in front of music fans who travel to see the bands that we were able to snag. The city took a gamble on us, and with the investments they made, that helped provide what would normally have been a prohibitively expensive tent, stage, and porta potty budget necessary to pull this kind of event off. And so because of the city's involvement, we now have an event that we can build upon for 2024 and beyond. We believe that we can grow the event in 2024 for 3 reasons. Number one, we are working with a longer timeline this time around. We were still kind of messing around with the format this time last year and hadn't hired the record machine yet, I think until like the end of summer. Number two, we are going into this with a little bit more seed money from last year's event. 2023 Fall Fest turned a profit of about $6,600. And Sean presented all that information to you at the after event report back in January. We've since put some of that money to work in our non-Fall Fest activities in accordance with the organization's mission statement, which is to support locally owned and operated physical storefronts within the North Kansas City city limits. And to that end, we had some money to supplement our sponsors' investments as well as the city's additional support for this spring's Pint Path Bicycle Pub Crawl, as well as to soft launch our inaugural Northtown Tour Book, providing incentives to participants to patronize our many restaurants, bars, and shops. Talk a little bit more on the tour book a little bit later. Pint Path made almost $4,500 for us in the spring to help recoup some of our expenditures, along with sponsorship help from the city. And we are entering our 2024 Fall Fest planning stage with a bigger pool of funds to work with. The third reason why we feel like we have a lot more going for us this time around is on top of our current operating funds, we now have a successful event to point to that we feel like will help get more sponsors off the bench and involved with us this time around. And then according to that slide that's up there right now, part of our 2024-2025 programming grant requests that we're coming before you to make today, we are asking only for the same level of investment as was allocated to help us get this Fall Fest event off the ground. Quick little refresher, our key expenses, those are the ones that are completely grant reliant. They're highlighted in yellow up there. You have no tents, no stages, no sound techs, or an event manager. You have no music festival. So similar to last year, we will cover some of these additional expenses via our sponsorships. But with this being our second year for the event, we are now like a known commodity with momentum to grow our attendance. And having that longer period to obtain sponsorships than we did last year makes us feel like we can grow this event. By taking advantage of the strengths that we have going to year 2, we feel like we can do even more with the amount that we're given. Next slide, please. So that brings us to Pint Path. Our after-event report for Eventbrite for Pint Path this year tells us that the event made $4,230 in net revenue from ticket sales, of which we've shared a portion of proceeds with our charity partners at Revolve KC and the Northland Assistance Center. Northland Assistance, in fact, popped up on F325's patio space and helped sell beers for tip jar donations during the after-party concert. And that after-party was made possible again with the help from our sponsors, including the City of North Kansas City. While our requests for Pint Path 2025 assistance will remain, comparatively speaking, much smaller than what we're asking for Fall Fest, being able to expand the event into more than this sort of ad hoc bicycle pub crawl it's been for the last 10 years has helped increase its appeal and create an even bigger of a groundswell event. This benefits our check-in locations, including this year's Christine's Firehouse and Outlaw Cigar, and it even more greatly benefits our after-party location, which, as mentioned, was hosted by F325 Barbecue. You'll see that in the picture there on the right-hand side. And then to a certain degree, it gives a major bump to every participating stop. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit. First, I want to revisit our revenue and participation stats. So you'll see up there revenue. So our ticket proceeds roll every year. They roll into the next Pint Path events budget. We keep them separate from our River North year-round operations. You'll see that our sponsorship support, including the cities, help get our revenue back up to those post-COVID event levels. Next slide, please. More importantly to us than the revenues, though, participation, that's foot traffic. In 2024, we recovered half of the attendance loss from our highs that we had just after COVID quarantine, and we didn't have to drop ticket prices to do so. And that further benefits our charity partners that we haven't had in previous years. However, we feel that it'll take another year of our expanded promotional budget to get this event where it has the potential to be. So it's trending in the right direction, but there's more left to see. Next slide, please. Yeah, Pine Path is never meant to be this giant revenue producer for our organization. It's why we're sharing revenues with charity partners now and helping amplify their causes. If the Fall Fest major benefits are to showcase an overlooked stretch of our town and get the community together for a good time and show off our brewing industry, what the Pine Path is, that's a deep dive to participating visitors. It's something that forces them into new places they otherwise wouldn't have seen. In addition to getting an opportunity to make an impression on new visitors, our event resulted in an estimated 940 beverages sold by our locally owned and operated institutions. On average, that's about 55 drinks per venue for 17 venues, and at $4 on average per special, that's $220 in extra sales. What would normally be a pretty slow time in early afternoon on a Saturday. Next slide, please. So this slide I brought to you when making the Pine Path request this last time around. And so just to kind of revisit it, did the additions that we had in 2024 help provide us with our Pine Path dilution problem? The results were, although the formula above shows a modest bump in visitors and sales each place that gets averaged out, that was actually based on higher average turnouts in the events coming just out of COVID quarantine. I'm happy to report that the additions that you all helped us with helped get our event back up to those higher turnouts. We still haven't really leapfrogged this event into the 500, 600, maybe even 700 person turnout that we would eventually like to see for it. We're finding it kind of difficult to break through that 300 person ceiling. It's a bicycle pub crawl, and maybe because of how much of a specialty event it is, that might keep it from growing to what it could be. But for last Pint Path's event specifically, some lessons that we learned, we took some of our funds from the city. We got Bike Walk KC involved. Great organization. They've been fantastically supportive of our event. The money that we used to sponsor them, I don't really think made a ton of sense in terms of the e-bikes that they brought for the event. I think a conclusion you could draw with our partnership with Bike Walk KC was that most people either want to walk or bike this event, and if you want to bike, you're bringing your own bike. So having all these additional, even though they're super cool e-bikes, we're really wanting to showcase these e-bikes that they're bringing to our town and what you have available. I don't know if that was worth the sponsorship that we had with them. Although the after party was a great time, the on-air advertising we spent to promote it, in my opinion, it didn't really significantly add to our ticket sales. Although diehards kind of stuck out to the end. Once those prizes got passed out, we had just a ton of really tired people ready to head home. So we want to be able to utilize this relationship we have with the record machine. We plan on continuing a long relationship with Nathan due to the Fall Fest alone. And so I think it's in both of our best interests to better figure out how to make live music work for Pint Path ticket sales themselves. The biggest lesson of all of 2024 Pint Path that we've yet to see is how widely adopted the use of the Northtown Tour Book will be. So the tour book was soft launched as a grand prize to entice people into Pint Path. We paid for the printing of those tour books as part of the grant for Pint Path from the city. So only about 80 people or so out there have one of them in their hands. And so we're still kind of figuring out how popular that's being used among all of the participating businesses. I hear anecdotal evidence from some of the several participating businesses that they are seeing use of those tour book coupons. We don't have everybody in the tour book this time around, but we feel like it's one of the widest varieties of businesses for one of these programs in North Kansas City, and so we hope next time we do this, we get everybody. If the city, again, decides to give us $5,000 to support 2025 Pint Path, we can reroute some of the money that we spent on tour books and maybe some of the money that we spent on Mug Club membership prizes, and maybe even some of that money that we partnered with the e-bike folks and shore up our advertising budget. Because I think that really had the big impact for this event, really made a difference in getting us back to where we needed to be. And I think that's what's really going to help boost this event and get more people in North Kansas City, which is what this is all about. So just to kind of close up, Pint Path, it's had 10 years of momentum behind it. We have some really high-level questions that we as a steering committee still need to ask ourselves regarding the growth of this event. But what we do know is that the city's support helped to get the event back up to where it once was. Do you want to go back one more slide? So those vertical signs that we saw around downtown immediately after Snake Saturday, with a second grant, will allow us to expand the number that we have. We already have the ones from last year. We want to expand them throughout downtown.
You know how many we had last year? Or I guess that's
So we got 6 last year. We're going to do another 6 this time around. And so,
okay.
yeah, so I mean,
Nice
like,
little
we
gradual-
really concentrated it just
Yeah.
to, like, the most central parts of downtown, just for budgetary reasons. But I think having those signs up, as long as you can, any kind of visitors you have driving through town, that's amazing awareness for what's coming up next in town. So, yeah, anyway, flip to the next slide. Are there any questions?
Questions? I got one. I would have sent it to you in advance, but I thought of it during your
Sure.
presentation. Obviously, good for small businesses when people come from out of town and visit for that first time, hopefully you retain a customer. Do you know what percentage of folks that participate in these events are non-North Kansas City residents?
Are from out of town.
Yeah.
We don't have a great way of tracking that, especially with Pint Path, because they go to so many different businesses who record their business so many different ways.
Yeah.
So like we can kind of find out what sales they had for the day, how many beers they sold.
Yeah, I just wasn't curious if you tracked that on your initial sales. when you
Yeah,
sold
so I
tickets or
mean,
whatever, by
like-
zip code or something.
Well, yeah, what we're able to track is how our advertising has done as far as purchasing tickets.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we could be a little bit better about tracking who's coming from out of 64116 at least.
Yeah.
I feel like on our Pint Path Eventbrite this time around, we did specify zip code, so I can go back and at least look for those.
Yeah, no, I mean,
250,
that's-
yeah,
I can
some
follow
odd
up with you
people.
later. I just kind of
Yeah.
to see. Councilmember Saper.
Yeah, I'd like to reinforce that, because the only rationale for public money going to support these private businesses through these various things is that they bring new people.
Tourism, yeah.
Into North Kansas City.
Yeah.
And if we don't have any data to support that, I'm reluctant to support your requests. And you've been going on long enough, at least with some of the events, that there should be some of that information available.
Yeah.
If not, I would really like, I think we need to see that in order to go forward, frankly. Otherwise, it's just a donation to private businesses, and not only private businesses, but a very select group of private businesses.
Let's get another question. How is the city recognized during these events? You know, it's kind of like a sponsorship. I know we're trying to
Sure.
get into more of a contract now, but how do you generally promote the city as well?
Yeah, so I think you probably have the largest amount of people seeing sponsor logos at the Fall Fest event. And so that's a lot more standard, a lot more straightforward. We have signage at the event. It's got the city's logo on it. For Pint Path, it's a little bit tougher because it's a lot more decentralized. You've got people going to all sorts of different places. However, this last Pint Path that we had, when we had the tour book as the grand
That's
prize,
absolutely,
very specifically, we had the city's logo on there. And I think having that, as many businesses as we did in there, shows that we're really trying to make this as like holistically of a North Kansas City
Yeah, 'cause
thing
that's
as we
big too. Is
can.
once they get down here, make sure they know where they are. They're
Yeah. So the city's logo, and then I feel like that helps it extend beyond the event itself, because those tour books are good until the end of the year. So you'll have people using them and continuing to
back.
see that logo. And
Bring your
yeah.
friends
I mean, that
too.
was the whole idea. The whole idea was, if we are going to buy prizes, let's make it things that
Yeah.
continue to make people come back into North Kansas City.
I like the thought. That's good.
So.
So this is, I guess, staff, and maybe you had this. Did you? So we're trying to go more towards a contract model now, similar to what we do with Northland festivals, right? And so do we have any sort of contract drafted yet, or is that kind of the next phase here?
No, as you guys know, we're kind of really looking at our budget. So what we were looking for is, are you
Oh,
guys
just
from a
trying to get the
budgetary
number. Okay.
standpoint looking for kind of funding both of these as one year? It makes it easier on a budgetary standpoint.
For a-
Also makes it easier for them from a planning perspective so that they can advertise each event at
Yeah.
the other event.
No, I think it makes sense to flip more to this contract model, similar to Northland festivals. There we go. Further, Councilmember Smith.
So I also think about this in the context of, I think we give 30,000 a year to the Business Council, who also support private local businesses. And we're not asking the same kind of pointed questions on, are they bringing people in? Like, we just kind of understand that, yeah, we could. But
We
I've
kind of hard a couple years.
having attended a couple of, yeah, we did go pretty hard. But having attended a few of these events, I know that people come from outside of Northtown. I can't quantify it, but I see people I don't recognize there, and I recognize most of the people around here. I know that over the decade since Pine Path has started, it has grown. It has become more of a hype. And I like what I see, and hearing from local business owners, they are seeing benefit here. You mentioned net revenue. I think it was like $4,300. We could take $4,300 and just shift it straight to the charity partners, but this also expands the sphere of influence, adds people into the fold, supports local businesses. Like, I love everything that I'm hearing, and I would be definitely in favor of running this as a contract for service at the requested amount.
And then, yeah, same, I should clarify, I do support, and I do think the money will help continue to grow the event, which is part of the goal, and help kind of probably make it more sustainable as well over time. Councilmember McGrone.
I just want to second what Councilmember Smith said. I think that especially the effort that you all put in as local residents and people who are committed to supporting North Kansas City businesses, that you all provide so much of your own personal time to draw people into North Kansas City. I also have a little bit of personal experience with some of the businesses that saw an increase on especially Pine Path. I know one of, like, the Rhino specifically saw an increase in foot traffic. The business isn't normally open on a Saturday, and there was about 75 people that came in that Saturday, most of which said that they had never been to that part of North Kansas City, which surprised me. I think most people end up over at Chicken and Pickle, and then they come onto Armour Road, and they're surprised that there are things to do there too. So from that perspective, I think that Pine Path was really successful in that. And then Fall Fest last year, the turnout for that was really surprisingly great, and I thought that you guys did a really good job with that. And the advertising that you did, especially for the types of music and vendors that you had there, I think that those did draw people from outside of North Kansas City who normally wouldn't have had an opportunity to see our town. So I would support doing a contract model like we do with Northland Festivals as well.
We go further. Councilmember Fitzgerald, then we'll get back.
Excuse me, sorry. I'd also support the contract model. It seems like a good use of our tourism fund. These dollars are coming in here from hotel, rentals and whatnot for this purpose. So if we're getting to that end goal, I like that. I do have one question on the Pine Path, just listening to the numbers. I'm trying to make sure I understand. So am I hearing $4,300 of donations were made out of that last year?
No, that was the amount of ticket revenues we had for admissions for the event.
Okay. I guess I'm getting a little hung up isn't exactly the right word, but in lieu of a better one with the, we throw in $5,000 and then there's excess revenue that's ending up as donations, kind of where that goes and how the dollars work.
I'll go back to, and I kind of covered this a few slides back, is that Pine Path in and of itself as an event is not a big revenue generator. It's a showcase of the city. The benefit that you're getting is all of these people coming into town. And I'm not even counting the amount of money that was made by the 17 participating places involved, right? I'm just talking about the money we made on ticket sales, which we then go and we roll into the next event. Because that, for us, like the important thing in even asking the city's support on this is to put money into an event that brings people to town, and that's the benefit. If we make any money from the ticket sales in the end, that'll help us for the next event. But yeah, I mean, it's we see it as a tourism opportunity.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Saper.
I realize it takes several years, especially Pine Path, to build a clientele for it and to get the word out.
Mm-hmm.
I would support this for one more year, but I would like to see some more data in terms of, is it bringing outsiders into North Kansas City, which is the whole point of it.
Yeah.
And without that, I don't think I could support it beyond 1 more year.
I'll go back to our ticket sales for this last event. I believe we asked for people's zip codes and that, so I'll pull that and get that information to you.
Good. With that, I think I got what we need. Appreciate the presentation. Appreciate staff's work on this as well. I think it's a good model shift to help make sure these are some sustainable events. So there we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, number not 8. Consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Item number 13. Got to read a lot here, I think.
An ordinance adopting and approving a reciprocal easements agreement with Store Safe 4 LLC and the City of North Kansas City. Bill number 7856, ordinance number 9653.
I never like when you have the statute book with you as well. Yeah, is that, hopefully that's not for this item. Is Tom taking this item? Yeah. Can you just give me like the 2 or 3 high-level bullet points on the changes in the contract here? 3, maybe 2. Okay.
The reciprocal easements agreement, well, first of all, I gave you the history of it in the memo, so
There we
I'm not
go.
going to go over that.
Thank
okay?
you.
But one critical point in there, just to put all of this in perspective, was, if you will recall, those of you that were on the council at the time, for this to become a reality, the city needed to do what it ended up doing here, but the most important part at that time was for us to have connectivity with 18th Avenue. And that's what they gave up their property ownership at 18th Avenue, where the driveway is and the parking. The reciprocal easement agreement, the original one, did in fact call for either party to be able to terminate it by giving appropriate and timely notice. Mr. Miller did that, and then the time ran. He came and stated in front of you last fall that he had made a mistake. He had intended to withdraw that. That aside, so it went away. The new document before you, I hope you looked at the red line especially. That shows differences in this one. And this time, neither side can terminate the whole thing. It's only certain items that would go away, and they're all identified, and I'm not going to read them to you. But that's important because we, the city, have certain easements that we need just to operate, for example, the lights. And where the light standards were built, we would want to continue to be able to own, maintain those moving into the future. So putting a fence down the middle is not a good solution for the city or for, and I've discussed that with Mr.
But we now retain those easements in perpetuity, I guess, right? Correct?
Right.
And the other major change was going from 90 days on termination to 120. Was that, did you change that? Is that what you said? Or is it already 120 anyways? 120 anyways. So really haven't, extended, but that's fine. I mean, at this point, it's time has gone on. We haven't had any problems. I'm fine with re-upping this contract at this point. I mean, obviously, the goal of this exercise was to make sure we protect our investment as well, and it sounds like we've done a better job of doing that through some of these what'll be continued easements. Councilmember Smith.
So a couple questions on this one. I noted that the parking space count dropped in this one from the last one. It went from 302 to 262. Is that a math error, or is that actually losing 40 spaces?
It was the way that it was written and counted. We haven't lost any parking spots. Okay. But originally, when we were counting up all of the parking, got a little bit carried away, and we never intended, and it's not included in here, the parking on the north side of the Store Safe building.
Along Swift, the entrance off of Swift.
Up against Swift on that side there. That was never intended to be included. It was, we have not lost, though, I can assure you, we have not lost from one to the next any parking spots. Do remember this, when the last one was agreed upon, we had no parking lot yet built.
Yeah.
And that's been part of the problem. We were relying on what the engineers said we were going to have, and then we had to, if you'll recall, we had to lose some to allow for the business that was on the west side, because their semis needed to back up, and we needed them to have space in there, and so we lost, I don't know, 8 or 10 parking spots by just doing that alone. The modification of the little, I don't know, that's immediately north of that area, where we have like an island that sticks out so you cannot drive from 16th to 18th straight through. We didn't want, delivery trucks making this a shortcut, et cetera. And so that's the reason, and that caused us to lose a few parking spots.
So nothing was lost. I was just making sure that A, this wasn't a math error, and B, that we weren't losing space. Okay.
Anthony can confirm that. I mean, that's what's happened.
That makes sense. Perfectly. Okay. Second question. Does this agreement endure if StoreSafe sells their property?
Yes.
Okay. So
now, that doesn't mean the next guy couldn't give the notice, but at least then we would not, the city would not lose, how do I want to word this?
Access.
The city would not lose what we really have, the easements that we still need, okay? The last one, technically, those, went away if they were on his side of the property.
Right.
Okay? So we end up maintaining those. Sorry, that was a very poor explanation of that, and I'll be the first to admit it.
So what do we lose if the contract is terminated by a successor party?
Okay.
Or the current party?
Or the current party.
Yeah, what do we lose in that case?
We would lose the following. We would lose, not that many, the company, that's the company is referred, StoreSafe's access on to Swift. That would go away. Okay? Okay? We would lose their parking on the, I'll call it the east half of this parking lot. We would lose that parking.
That's the 121 spaces?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we would lose, the sign easement would go away, and the snow removal obligation would go away, and of course, also the city parking easement would go away.
Okay.
I mean, and then remember, though, the other side of this, and that is, in the event this, and I don't think there's any, we don't have any desire to do it, I'm not aware of it, but in the event the city ever decided it needed to, wanted to sell its parcel of property, okay, after giving the notice, when it sells it then, the easement itself goes away when we transfer it to a third party. The easement, his access easement to 18th Avenue.
Right. Okay, thank you for that. And last question, I didn't find it, but is there an end date, or is this perpetual until a party terminates it?
There's not an end date.
There's no end date, okay.
No.
Thank you.
Hurt my back. Further questions? I don't know why I was looking at Councilmember Saper. I felt like you. No? Good, good. If not, is there a motion?
First reading?
Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed, say no. Motion carries.
An ordinance adopting and approving a reciprocal easements agreement between StoreSafe 4 LLC and the City of North Kansas City, Missouri regarding certain real property owned by StoreSafe 4 LLC and the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, generally located north of 16th Avenue, east of Clay Street, south of 18th Avenue, and west of Swift, in the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute said document on behalf of the city.
I move that Bill number 7856 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9653.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Saper?
Yes.
Councilmember McGrone?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
An ordinance adopting and approving a reciprocal easements agreement between StoreSafe 4 LLC and the City of North Kansas City, Missouri regarding certain real property owned by StoreSafe 4 LLC and the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, generally located north of 16th Avenue, east of Clay Street, south of 18th Avenue, and west of Swift in the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute said documents on behalf of the city.
Oh, there you go, 14.
Approving accounts due and payable by the city through June 14th, 2024. Bill number 7857, ordinance number 9654.
First reading.
Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion
An
carries.
ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through June 14th, 2024.
I move that bill number 7857 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9654.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Magrone.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through June 14th, 2024.
All right, staff comments. What do we got?
All right, you have the reports in there. I will point out, based on a question on the monthly income report, that sales tax, when you look at that versus the target of 67%, sales tax is accrual, and it's about 2 months behind right now. So it's not the full, it's what we receive.
Got it.
If I say this right, what we receive in May is March's sales. So we post it back.
Room for improvement.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
Don't
but,
go-
so when you see 58%, for example, in the sales tax, it's because we don't have a full eight months data in
About
there.
2 months.
So, that, also, Kim and Shu have staff comments,
All right.
unless there's questions.
No. You gotta give up your mic. No, kidding. Oh, we're skipping. There we go.
I have a quick update on the Riverfront Levee Trail. We officially wrapped up on that feasibility study. That final report will be posted online. It will be available on Monday next week. We have an estimated cost based off the engineering's and detailed breakdown sheets, and we might look into the future funding opportunities to see if we can construct it in the near future. I would like to thank everyone in this community who participated in one of those open houses and sent us the comments and sit in the steering committee. Thank you, Councilmember Clark, and sitting in the steering committee and help us went through this process. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Real quick, I'd just like to remind everybody that the Cromit Foundation will have their Meet the Artist event next week, Wednesday, June 26th, at Summit Heating and Cooling at 1455 Iron Street. Danny Roma, who is the artist of the mural, will be on site. She will be there from 6 to 7. She'll do a little speech about what the mural is. The name is You Can Have It All. She'll kind of give a little bit of the history and what inspired her at 6:15, and then she will be open for questions after.
All right. Beautiful. Thank you. Further staff comments? Seeing none. Councilmember comments. Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Thank you to everyone who spoke during public comments today, and no further comments.
Here we go. Councilmember Alvarez.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. Thank you for everyone that made the comments, and also looking forward to McLean's Bakery coming in. I think that'll be a nice asset to the city, so looking forward to that.
Thank you. Councilmember Clark.
I would support the short-term parking initiative that the McLean's was asking for. I think that could be beneficial in that area. That's just my opinion. That's it for me.
Thank you. Councilmember Todd. Councilmember Saper. Yeah. Hold on. Very brief. Good. There we go.
The Equity Inclusion Committee had a very successful participation in the Pride Parade with a great float, which we put together with the help from the city departments. And this committee is also beginning to look at city ordinances and codes for equity and inclusion issues and is diving deeply into them.
Thank you. Councilmember Magrone.
I just also want to thank everyone who came out to speak about the trash discussion that we hope to have soon, and the group from McLean's. I'm really looking forward to McLean's coming, and I would also support short-term parking for them in some way.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
Okay, a couple things. So a week ago, I hosted a gun violence prevention discussion at Chicken and Pickle. Huge thanks to Chief Freeman for coming out and volunteering his time while the Yankees were beating the Royals down. He had a lot of good things to say. Kim also came out to support and took the microphone for a little bit. Don't let these two fool you. They love to have the microphone in their hand and share good information. One thing that stuck with me from that meeting is if you have kids, you're a gun owner, you're likely locking your firearms up, but when your kids go to somebody else's house to play or to visit, are you asking those other parents if they are also securing their firearms? That was probably my biggest takeaway from that meeting. A lot of good actionable items that I'm going to be pouring through and reporting out on. Parks Board and City Council also had a meeting, and I want to thank David Taylor for putting forth what I call the David Plan, which was a great compromise on a shared use path through the very western edge of Mackin Park. I look forward to further seeing how that develops. Thanks to Joe and River North for all they do for the community. Looking forward to working together on these things now. Huge shout out to Timothy Dean, our newest re-up on the library board, for attaching a resume to his application and filling it out. Awesome. And then for the trash and recycling, I do want to clarify, I put a post out on the community Facebook page to get feedback, and I incorrectly stated that residents are being billed directly for trash services. That is something the city picks up the tab through the general fund, which is a very rare thing that a city does. My mistake. The city's paying for that, not through water bills. That's all from me.
Lots of good stuff. Thank you. With that, God, you guys did a good job hitting everything. I'd ask that we bring back the McLean's thing, and we'll debate that at a future meeting. But I'll talk to you. Yeah, I'll follow up. There we go. Number 18, and I'll let you read all four of them tonight.
Thank you so much. Consideration of a request to hold in recess into an executive session is requested by the city councilor to be held on this date on a potential litigation matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statute 610. Let me redo this.
You want me to, I can, no, I'm just kidding.
I'm going to start. Held on this date on a litigation matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statutes, Section 610.0211.
Move to approve.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Saper?
Yes.
Councilmember McGrone?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Consideration of a request to hold in recess into an executive session is requested by the city councilor to be held on this date on a real estate matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statutes, Section 610.0212.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Saper?
Yes.
Councilmember McGrone?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Consideration of a request to hold in recess into an executive session as requested by the city administrator to be held on this date on a contractual matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statute, Section 610.02112.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Saper?
Yes.
Councilmember McGrone?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Consideration of a request to hold in recess into an executive session is requested by the mayor to be held on this date on a personnel matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statutes, Section 610.0213.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Saper?
Yes.
Councilmember McGrone?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
With that, we're going to go into executive session. Channel 2 and the YouTube live stream will cut off. There'll be no further public business or votes taken this evening. Thank you.